Okay.
Good evening.
It's a session from John and Mark after quite a gap.
Quite a gap.
Thanks to John's foot.
Broken foot, which has put me out of action for nearly 3 months, actually. So no travelling. Yeah, so well, good to be back. I've got a cold today now.
And I've got a beard.
Mark's got a beard. But you had a beard last... No,
Did I have a beard last
time?
time?
Bit of a beard last time.
Yeah.
You've got a proper beard now.
So, our first tune of the night, Cold Blood, San Francisco band on the Billy Graham's label, San Francisco. Yeah, this album's called Sisyphus. I knew absolutely nothing about this band and just heard that they had an amazing rhythm section of Rod Elliott on bass and Sandy McKee on drums. And this album is it's kind of got the Tower of Power, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Chicago kind of, San Francisco funk sound. Normally actually with a vocalist called Lydia Pence, who's very Janis Joplin-esque, but in fact the track we played was called Shop Talk and it's purely instrumental. But
So I did great.
kicked things off very
It's a
strongly.
complete new one on me, I must admit, actually.
Yeah.
Although it kind of fitted in with that West Coast kind of jazz, soul, funk sound. Pretty
Yeah.
good. I then went for the most unpopular Freddie Hubbard record, Windjammer, which always gets 1 star when it's reviewed, actually, but it's always one I've actually quite liked. It's from his Columbia days, and this one's produced by Bob James, who's also not that popular quite a lot of the time, and played the track Dreamweaver, which has some great drumming from Andy Newmark. Yeah, kind of worth listening to. I mean, it's kind of, in a way, it's quite different to his CTI stuff and quite, obviously, very different to his hard bop stuff, but it's a good record, this one.
Following that, we had some Cucumber Slumber from Weather Report's Mysterious Traveller, sensational bass line from Alphonso Johnson. Just a great, a track that doesn't really sound like anybody else, I suppose. It has that Weather Report sound, and it was making me think. It really had that kind of early 70s electric sort of fusion feel, a little Miles-like, but the Weather Report take on that sound. Great.
Yeah, classic. I then dug into the Miles Davis Cellar Door sessions. I've had this since it came out, actually. It's only recently I've been just really listening to it, especially when I had a broken foot. It's much easier to play CDs than get up and change records all the time. But so I played great lineup. Keith Jarrett, Gary Bartz, Michael Henderson, Jack DeJohnette, Miles, of course, and on some of the CDs it's got Ato Moreira, and the last 2 it's got John McLaughlin on. But it's if you haven't got this, it's worth getting, actually. I mean, really very raw, powerful stuff, actually. Lovely little book.
Very beautiful booklet.
Very nice book. And I played Directions, which is off the 3rd CD of this, which sounded great, actually.
Well, it has, unlike a lot of the recordings, the drum sound actually is really full.
Yeah.
Bit like on the Bill Laswell Pantalassa CD, you actually hear the drums as they should sound.
Definitely.
And you hear that on that box
Yeah.
sound. So we went from there to some more experimental Tom York music. It's his new Tomorrow Modern Boxes album. Beautiful package. Very nice sort of especially printed plastic sleeve. Very, very beautiful release. We listened to the Mother Lode. Definitely kind of picks up from the... Is it Eraser? Is that the name of his...
Yeah.
Yeah.
First solo one.
Yeah, and definitely a bit of the Atoms for Peace vibe as well. I mean, I've only literally just got this, but some very, very deep sub-bass action that was sounding amazing.
I'm not quite sure what took me to the National, but I've been listening to this again. I haven't listened to this since it came out, actually, which must have been about 5-6 years ago now. Yeah. So, very mainstream, obviously very successful band, the Boxer, the National, but kind of good stuff, I think, actually. And I think in terms of kind of contemporary kind of pop and rock music, it's hard to beat them, actually. I played the track called Start a War, which is a great track. It kind of builds, but never really explodes. You kind of think it's going to burst out and never quite does. Simmers. So, National.
I guess, just very loosely, that we were talking about good pop music, and I played a track from Jerry Rafferty's, I think it's his first solo album, called Can I Have My Money Back? From 1971. We listened to a track called Long Way Round, which, as John pointed out, has Jerry Rafferty sounding somewhere between Paul McCartney and John Lennon, with some kind of Beach Boy-esque harmonies as well. A very great sort of pop commercial tune.
Definitely. I tend to binge a lot on different people, and I had a Bob Dylan binge a couple of months ago, and I think New Morning, which is this one here, it's one of my favourite Bob Dylan records. It's got a very kind of relaxed sound. And there was something about actually the organ sound on the Jerry Rafferty track that reminded me of this. Really, played the track called Day of the Locusts. This was kind of transitional album after he made his self-portrait album and the one just called Bob Dylan, which were not very popular with the press or the public. And this was him kind of, I suppose, kind of returning to form. So Bob, we don't often play Bob.
Very rare.
It's very rare to play Bob in a session.
John was noting that all of the tracks sounded like first takes.
Yeah.
And had a kind of real sort of loose feel, which kind of made me think a bit of this Van Morrison Astral Weeks album, which I've just picked up very recently, very, very cheaply. I never had it. Didn't really know it. But yes, very much, very kind of free-flowing, with a fantastic band with Richard Davis on the bass. And as far as I know, Van Morrison didn't really have much of a connection with the musicians, and apparently no one really thought the sessions were very good, but actually it sounds fantastic and certainly really worth checking. We listened to Sweet Thing.
I think Connie Kay's playing on this as well.
Connie Kay is on this.
From Modern Jazz Quartet.
Yeah, on drums.
No real connection, except I probably had that album when I was at school, and I had this album when I was at school as well. Another binge I had was on Jefferson Airplane recently as well, actually, who I've never kind of paid enough attention to for quite a long time. And this has to be one, bless its pointed little head, has to be one of the most kind of visceral, exciting live albums ever made. And played the track The Other Side of This Light, which has just amazing kind of hammered kind of bass playing from Jack Cassidy. I mean, if you just for pure kind of excitement and atmosphere, this is hard to beat this record. Bless its pointed little head.
So this led us into a little psychedelic section, which was followed up by a cover version of probably one of the ultimate psychedelic tracks, which was Tomorrow Never Knows, the Beatles, but just known as TNK, and it's the 801, Phil Manzanera's 801 band, live at the Royal Festival Hall. And so this is a band with Eno, Phil Manzanera, Simon Phillips on drums, Bill McCormick from Quiet Sun, Matching Mole on bass, and another very fiery live track. Very exciting.
I think it was a bit of a conversation on one of the previous posts we did about that record, actually.
Was that?
Yeah, I think so, from the comments. Next one, I can't show the outside cover because it'll get taken down by Google's bots. But played Gypsy Eyes off Electric Ladyland. This is my original copy from when I was a teenager. And I seem to have two copies of 3 records in here, 2 copies of the first record and one of the second one. So I don't know what that's all about. Anyway, classic record. I don't need to tell anyone about Jimi Hendrix or Electric Ladyland.
Sounded
amazing.
Still sounds really revolutionary, as does this record, which is produced by David Rubinson, who did a lot of the Herbie productions in the early 70s, the United States of America, Sort of sounds a bit like a garage punk band, I suppose, psychedelic garage punk band, with a vocalist who sounds a little bit like the woman from Portishead, but then sort of suddenly goes into some really weird synth noises and ring modulator stuff. A very experimental one-off album, definitely worth listening to. I just picked it up recently as a reissue.
Something about the synth sounds on that somehow got me into thinking about Scientist, who was basically classic mixer, worked in King Tubby's studio, kind of late period from that kind of time, and this was from I guess from the late 80s, this one, or mid 80s. This is Scientist meets the Roots Radics. The Roots Radics were kind of one of the main kind of backing bands for lots and lots of singers. I played the track called Flabber is Wild, which has a fantastic kind of bass line from Flabber Holt.
And has apparently a great dub version of the track Kiss Somebody by Johnny Osborne.
Yeah.
Which was why we ended up...
It's also a
purple vinyl, yeah.
Weird vinyl.
Which is why I then played a classic Studio One 7-inch by Johnny Osborne. Beautiful track called Truths and Rights, a real sort of spiritual roots reggae tune. Absolutely fantastic.
Then I think we had a cheese break.
We did.
And I then kicked off on... Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Then kicked off on one of my favourite bands of all time, the Stylistics, and played the track Could This Be the End? I mean, this was the last album, I think, that was produced by Tom Bell for the Stylistics, and fantastic arrangements on this, actually. Just really, really great album. And this was I think the American edition has a different cover, actually. It's a UK version.
And definitely